Lee even defended his critics to his aid, saying, while it was very hard to bear, it was perhaps quite natural that such hasty conclusions should be announced. But Lee added, it was better not to attempt a justification of defense, but to go on steadily in the discharge of duty, leaving all else to the calmer judgment of the future and to a kind providence. Later, Lee mused, we appointed all our worst generals to command the army, and all our best generals to edit the newspapers. President Davis defended Lee. He came back carrying the heavy load of defeat and unappreciated by the people, for they could not know that if his plans and orders had been carried out, the result would have been victory. Lee's public image was greatly tarnished, however. In 90 days he had gone from hero to disgrace. Never in his long military career had his reputation ever been so low. Lee turned his mind to his family. This first Christmas away, Lee wrote to his daughter, I send you some sweet violets that I gathered for you this morning while covered with dense white frost, whose crystals glittered in the bright sun like diamonds, and formed a brooch of rare beauty and sweetness which could not be fabricated by the expenditure of a world of money. The husband was cheerful in a letter to Mary about a sad subject. He wrote near Christmas, I cannot let this day of grateful rejoicing pass, dear Mary, without some communication with you. He wrote warmly of remembered Christmases with the family at Arlington, which now, he believed, could not be in a habitable condition with Union soldiers overrunning it, and it is better to make up our minds to a general loss. But if Mary's ancestral home was written off by Lee as lost forever to his family, hope was not gone. In the absence of a home, he had written, I wish I could purchase Stratford. That is the only other place I could go to, now accessible to us, that would inspire me with feelings of pleasure and local love. He continued writing of his boyhood home, which he had left for Alexandria before he was old enough for school. It is a poor place, but we could make enough cornbread and bacon for our supper, and the girls could weave us clothes. I wonder if it is for sale, and how much. Ask Fitzhugh to try to find out when he gets to Fredericksburg. But family matters could not block out the public outcry against Lee, which continued. When President Davis sent Lee to South Carolina to erect defenses, the Richmond Examiner said, he is going where it is hoped he will be far more successful with the spade than with the sword. Lee went quietly on to his new duties in South Carolina. Sitting in his tent through the cold January days when most military action was frozen in countless harsh positions, Lee based his future on past experiences. The South, geared for a short war, had already suffered heavily from nearly 20 months of fighting in their own backyard. In spite of tremendous shortages, Lee's Army of Northern Virginia had repeatedly driven back superior Union forces under George McClellan, John Pope, and Ambrose E. Burnside. Lincoln had yet to find a general who could outthink Lee. In fact, there were times the North felt as though Lee had looked into their own tents when secret plans were being made. Lee had the uncanny ability to guess what each general would do. Since the CSA could not win in a long war against the superior numbers and supplies, it would be necessary to make the North want peace. The best way to do that, Lee figured, was to bring more pressure on the federal home front. Southern victories in the field might force the North to come to terms. There were some problems in Lee's plan. He was commanding general only of the Army of Northern Virginia, a term he had invented. There were 10 other states in the Confederacy, and he had no authority over them and no reason to expect any help from them. They had their own problems. Lee was a realist. He had expressed his position to Mary when rumors had suggested England was about to enter war on the side of the South. "We must make up our minds to fight our own battles and win our independence alone," Lee exclaimed. It was still true. He could not count on help from any place except Virginia. There were other problems, too, with the need for speed being top priority. The Virginia soldiers were barefoot and poorly clad, and they could not fight too long in such condition. A quick victory was necessary if the South was to force the North to call for peace. But how was he to achieve a fast, decisive victory? 5 top generals, Lee figured, each doing a special job, might do what he had in mind. Thoroughly carefully, Lee thought through a strategy he would use if Richmond was attacked. By the time the spring thaws allow man and animals to move across the ground, Lee was ready for the attack he suspected Lincoln's men would launch, and which would give Lee his chance for a quick victory. End of chapter 7.